My name is Rebecca Knight. I'm one of the resident paranormal investigators at the Stanley Hotel.
How long have you worked at the Stanley Hotel for?
Me personally, I've been here off and on since 2020, 2019.
What's the most paranormal thing that's happened to you, like at work?
At work would be we were getting ready in 2020 to do a live stream paranormal investigation. It was going to be this big event. It was ticketed, and it was a safe way for people to be able to celebrate Halloween from home. And we were going to do this guest celebrity paranormal live stream at the Queen Mary. At the time, we were at the Stanley Hotel, and we had just gotten the trailer for promoting this event. And the producers for it decided that it was going to be a paranormal live stream alongside world premiere of heavy metal rock music. So there was a little bit of a mishmash, at least for me as a vintage girly. I'm more Queen Mary vibes, 1930s, 1940s kind of jazz. So of course the backing track was going to be like this heavy metal rock kind of sound. So we're in the billiards room in the Stanley Hotel. And at that time, we were performing a show there, had a sound system. And this sound system was done with a very traditional light board. So it has knobs that you have to turn with your fingers. And because we're between shows, we had the volume turned down just so that it's kind of playing, but it doesn't really need to be like seating theater ambiance level. And we're watching and listening to the trailer. And all of a sudden, our music, which is playing more classical music, more appropriate to the Stanley Hotel music, suddenly gets turned all the way up. And we both look over at the soundboard because that should mean that a human physically had to turn that knob to get that volume all the way up. And of course, nobody's there. We're the only two people in the room. So we're like, okay, Flora, we get it. We prefer that music too. Flora Stanley is the reason. Flora and F.O. Stanley are the reasons that the Stanley Hotel exists. And Flora's dream was of music, to play music, to be in the Boston Symphony. So we find a lot of anomalies with music. And I found that at the Queen Mary too. But Flora, we know, has this history of music. So when music anomalies happen at the hotel, it's just kind of easy to blame that. And it seems appropriate that the music that had been playing in billiards that got turned up is more of her style than today's heavy metal rock bands. So it seems small, but it's just, especially when we have multiple music anomalies and just in the moment in which it happened. And we never had a glitch with that soundboard other than that. So the only reasonable explanation was that the knob got turned up, but no one's in the room except for us.
So are there like reoccurring spirits?
Yeah. And for me, because I like to take that scientific standpoint, that is what holds more, not evidence. Well, I mean, evidence, but it means more to me when something is reoccurring, because to me, that seems to start a pattern of proof when something kind of reoccurs. And because we do investigations with groups that are people that have bought tickets to join, they have no idea what we're hoping to find, what that repeat occurrence might be. So when they provide the information without having had that information previously, that becomes really interesting. So yeah, I think every haunted location kind of has what is the legends of the grounds. For us is Flora and F.O. Stanley. There's a couple gentlemen that are legend rumored to be in our concert hall, along with another young girl. But the young girl, we know the story that comes from her isn't true. We don't dispute that she's there, but we know that the story provided to her for like her reason for existing there is false. So with those things, you'll find different things that kind of repeat in those patterns. So Flora, it's music. FO, it's children getting lost from tours with their families and groups, and then they suddenly show up at the front desk. And of course, everybody's concerned, where were you? Where were you? And these are children. They don't have access to the internet. They're not finding these stories, and they're just providing, oh yeah, the owner, took me around and showed me his hotel. And everybody's like, what do you mean the owner? Because at the time, it would be known that the owner would be in London, not FO, but whoever the current owner of the Stanley was. And they would look up above the front desk and go, yeah, that guy with the beard, and point at a picture of FO Stanley. And everybody's like, he's been dead for decades. So you have that as a repeat occurrence at the hotel. You find these repeat occurrences in what people tell. And it gets hard when something becomes a story, because then we all have access to the internet, or the time that Sam and Colby went and investigated and they talked about the thing there. And then everybody kind of wants to be part of that or experience that or find it. So then legends just get repeated until maybe they get turned into truth by that power of believing in them, manifesting them to be true because so many collectively believe in it. But yeah, definitely repeat experiences in the hotel rooms at the Stanley Hotel. There's a room where people will find that their things get packed up, or they're getting organized, or they can get the hint that they're being asked to leave the room because that space wasn't intended for unwed couples. So yeah, people will experience repeat things and repeat things without explanation, like the turning of the knob, no one has a key card to my room, no housekeeping access my room, so why is my suitcase packed up when I unpacked it and laid it on the bed before I left for lunch?
How can you communicate with the apparitions and stuff?
So the way that we do on the Overlook Project to try and keep things as sciencey as possible, it's hard because paranormal is not really supported by science. It's not really understood by science because so much of it always gets rooted in belief or kind of accepting things as paranormal evidence. So we always use a combination of tools in the hope that tools that work differently can still have the same response. So, even if an EMF someone believes is only being falsely triggered, why is a device that's also measuring pressure getting triggered as a response as well, in a timely manner and in a way to questions? So we have K2 meters, but we know all the issues that arise with that and like to make sure we're using them in conjunction, either multiples to get a measure that it's not a false positive and that it's, some sort of direct interaction. Or like I said, alongside other equipment, we have cat balls, which are motion activated, and we stabilize on baseball stands. So then that way they're not getting false positive from just rolling and moving and shifting. We have a device that's called an EDI Plus, and it puts a lot of things into one device. It measures the temperature, pressure, and humidity, also has K2 and vibration measurements and sensors on it. And those are measuring if there becomes this significant change in the environment that happens in under half a second, which shouldn't really happen. We don't wake up, the sun goes up and suddenly it's 82 degrees. The sun slowly rises and it gets warmer. So things of those environmental factors should happen gradually, unless you suddenly turn on an air conditioner or push a heater on it. You shouldn't have fluctuations in environmental elements in half a second that are more than a degree of change. And then our primary method is the Estes method, developed here in Estes Park, Colorado at the Stanley Hotel. So it takes a spirit box, and a spirit box is a radio scanner. So it just scans through stations. So if you've ever hit scan on a radio in a car when you're out somewhere new and you don't know what radio stations are available by signal, press that scan and it scans through. Your car will find the next station that has signal and play a little snippet for you to see if it's playing the music or something that you like, and then you turn the scan off and you listen to it. A spirit box radio scanner is just going through at whatever rate of speed you set it. And then in there's little snippets of the radio coming through, little snippets of words and commercials and traffic and weather reports. So we use that, but instead of just setting it out in the middle of a room, we've attached it to noise isolating headphones. And then one or two people are listening through those headphones and also wearing a blindfold. So then now, if they're hearing anything through the spirit box, they don't know what questions or what is happening in the room because they're deaf and blind to what everybody else is experiencing. So in that, they hopefully become the communicator for whatever ghost or entity might be present, if that ghost or entity is able to find a way to communicate to that person to then communicate with us, kind of playing this game of telephone.
Is there anything you think really resembles the Stanley Hotel in The Shining?
Ooh, um, they filmed a lot of it on sound stages and then at another hotel in Washington, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, their elevator's old, our elevator's old, but they're old in different ways. The hotel in the movie is very different from the hotel here. That hotel gives this feeling of being large and grand and spacious. And ours is large and grand looking from the outside. But this is a building that was built for their friends to come and visit them in the summer and opened in 1909. We don't have large, grand, spacious ballrooms. We don't have a 1970s aqua or red restroom. The hotel, I believe Stephen King described the hotel very dark in his book. And granted, he wrote a horror story. So, of course, you're going to reflect those vibes in the world you're building. But the hotel at the time that he knew it was white and just white. When he came back, he filmed the miniseries at the hotel. So that one is us. That is the Stanley Hotel in Colorado when you go watch Stephen King's miniseries of The Shining. But he did paint it to try and darken it a little bit. So the hotel's no longer stark white on the inside. It now has a little vibe and character to it. There's now wallpaper up that makes it a little darker. And then they actually are responsible for creating the technique of airbrushing for painting because they wanted some of the plaster of Paris to look like wood grain, to look like wood. It looks like that now, but the winter vibes are there. That's probably about it. Is just that, when the hotel is shut down, it does get quiet up here in the winter. We're not the ski town. We're more the summer, come see the elk and the animals town. So in the winter, it's quiet. So it will feel spacious like The Shining depicts. But they are different places in which what was filmed in the movie and how we look here.
So those are all the questions that I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Maybe my soapbox moment is that I always like to convey that horror and television and YouTube now, has all taught us that paranormal's scary. And I always describe it as, we as humans are drawn to things that are scary or uncomfortable or blood, guts, gore, We don't want someone to be dead, but when you're driving down the freeway, those cars slow down and look at the accident. We are just drawn to looking at those things. So I'm not surprised that the paranormal world is portrayed as this thing that has to be scary and gruesome and awful and traumatic. But so far in my experiences and the places that I've investigated have all been places of love. And I think that can be way more powerful for someone to want to go back and haunt than being traumatized to a place. So I always hope that people can maybe have a little bit of a different perspective than what horror and television portray. And it's easy to fear the things that we can't see and that we don't know or understand. But I think if you took a breath and just tried to have a calm interaction, potential conversation with a ghost, you might find that it's just like talking you and I. It's just a conversation.